Hi, let's talk about this guitar. What you just heard was the in-between pickup setting. This guitar is kind of new to me. I got it a couple of years ago. A friend of mine called me up and said he was selling it, and I forgot what guitar it was. He was like, I'm selling that guitar you wanted. I forgot, and then when I remembered, I just had the worst year because of this thing you might have heard of, COVID-19. The entire world shut down. I lost a solid year's worth of work that was all booked in 3 weeks. So I'd had a really bad year financially, and this guitar suddenly came up for sale and was offered to me. And my friend was really, really generous with me and let me work with him on the payment, and I was able to sell a couple of things and buy it. This is a 1957 Gibson L-5CES. The C stands for cutaway, and the ES, electric Spanish guitar. I imagine many of you are familiar with this sort of terminology, but maybe you're not. The cool thing about this guitar, and the reason why I'd wanted one for so long, is because it has a Charlie Christian pickup at the neck, and it's got an Alnico 5 at the bridge. So years ago, this friend of mine happened to ask me, like, if you could have any guitar in the world, what would it be? And at this point, I have a lot of great guitars. And at this point, I was like, I'm not looking for anything. I've got great guitars. I love them all, and I use them all. I'm not really looking for anything. And he kept pushing me, if you could have anything you wanted. And finally, I was like, anything? I'd have an L5 with a Charlie Christian at the neck and a P90 at the bridge. And he said, oh, I got one of those. The reason I was so surprised is because there really isn't one of those. This is a combination that was made famous by Hank Garland, the great jazz and country virtuoso, Nashville session musician of the 1950s. And there's a picture of Tal Farlow playing a guitar with this combination. There's also, I think, a picture of Wes Montgomery playing guitar with this combination. I have to double check that, but I think there's a picture of him playing one that's, you can't quite see what's at the bridge, but it's definitely a Charlie Christian, it's definitely an L5, and it's either a P90 or an Alnico 5, which this is at the bridge. I've seen now all those pictures, and I've seen one that's a thin line with a slightly shorter scale that belonged to Hank Garland, and I've seen one more in person hanging up in a music store about 20 years ago, and I begged the guy to sell it to me, and he wouldn't. He was asking so much money. And that's it as far as L5s with this pickup configuration. So I'll talk to you a little bit about what this pickup is. You might have heard this called a staple pickup. They were being used in 1957, and they're similar to a P90, but they have a little bit more bark. P90s tend to have a little bit of a sweeter sound. They also, at the bridge, and I can't lie, I might prefer a P90 at the bridge. They do a little bit more compression, a little bit more of a natural type of breakup. These tend to be cleaner sounding, brighter sounding, meatier sounding, a little more aggressive. And the reason for that is each one of these pole pieces, these square pole pieces, are actually its own magnet. So it's kind of like a Fender. It's kind of like a Strat pickup or a Telecaster pickup, except supercharged in terms of size and the power of the magnets. These are Alnico 5 magnets. So instead of there being a magnet underneath that is giving its magnetic charge to a screw, it's actually each one of these is its own magnets, and they can each be brought up and down. The Charlie Christian pickup, on the other hand, has two big Alnico magnets that are underneath the top, and they are held on by these screws. Most Charlie Christian pickups that you've seen have a screw over here as well. That is located underneath the Alnico 5 pickup. This, like any L5 of this era, it's a long scale. It's 25.4. And it is a carved spruce top, carved maple back and sides. Not especially flamey sides, but nice flame on the neck and nice flame on the back, if you can see it. The neck is not slim, but really, really comfy. I've had a lot of work done to this guitar since I got it, and I'll explain some of that stuff. I had new binding made for the fingerboard by the amazing Tom Crandall in New York. Don't beat his door down hoping he'll do this kind of work for you. It's really a pain, and I begged, and I love Tom very much, and he acquiesced and did this, and he did an incredible job. The reason why I had the binding replaced was because an early fret job filed down, beveled the binding. As you can see on these multiply boards, the actual fretboard ends at the inside of this binding, all this multiple binding. And if the binding is then beveled down so that the frets come only to the edge of the board, you lose over 1/4 of an inch of width on your fretboard, and it becomes really tight and difficult to play. So Tom did this extraordinary job putting on new binding, including down here. I mean, it's an amazing job. And then we refretted it, and the frets are actually, I've put a lot of wear on them in the last year. The other thing that I did to this guitar is I had a pickguard made a tiny bit larger than the average pickguard for these. And I mean tiny bit, like, I don't know, maybe 10%, maybe 5%. But I wanted it to come close to the bridge so there isn't this space where your pinky just falls off into the middle. And this enables my hand to kind of like rest on the pickguard, which works for me. And I did one more thing that's kind of a secret thing, which I'm telling only the Peghead audience. There's a kind of Russian mad scientist who I think is like a PhD in electronics who's invented something he calls the Illich, because his name is Illich. You can look him up online. He makes an antenna that he custom makes for single coil pickups so that they're quieter, pretty much almost as quiet as a humbucker. I've had that done with my ES-150, a Charlie Christian guitar that 1940 that I've played as my main guitar for 23 years. And I had him do this for this guitar. He custom makes the antenna, which is then installed inside the guitar, and it makes the Charlie Christian pickup and the Alnico 5 pickup quiet. This is the Christian all the way open. That's the Alnico 5 pickup all the way open. The amp is on. Everything's turned up. That's both all the way open. So it's pretty quiet. So to give an idea of the sound, here's the Christian pickup. To me, it's even. It has just enough splank into the wood that things don't disappear. I was stunned when I started using this guitar on gigs how much more I liked it than my 150. And my 150, as maybe some of you know, I've used on everything for years and years and years, thinking it was just the best guitar that I could find. And this guitar is fantastic. It's made a believer out of me. I'm embarrassed to admit this. I'm an old person. I've never had a long scale, maple neck, carved top electric guitar. And the difference between the long scale and having a guitar that doesn't have a mahogany neck is stunning in terms of the clarity that it gives when you're playing through an amp or not through an amp. it still has this like very clear, defined sound. So that's the kind of warm, buttery, but more definition than a humbucker would have. Charlie Christian sound. This is the sound combined, which I think is great. This to me is just, it gives me all the, it gives me all the stuff that like Merle Travis had. Where you have just enough like trebly bite. You also have a very, very compressed, tight sound. That's super useful with country sort of stuff, or if I'm playing blues, add just a little bit of dirt or juice the amp, and it's just ridiculous. So now switching to the Alnico 5 pickup, I can really get like a telly sort of thing almost if I'm using a pick. And remember, these Gibsons with 2 pickups, this was the sound of Nashville in the 1950s, between Grady Martin and Hank Garland. They were all using Gibsons. No one used a Fender. But if you're looking to get like, you can still get like a real kind of twangy sort of sound. Not quite as twangy as a P90. It's still a little more defined. And I tend to get way close to the bridge often with my picking hand. But you can... you can still get a real twangy sort of sound. So this guitar has just changed my life. I'm a believer. I really didn't think that I would find something ever that gave me everything that this guitar does in terms of versatility. There's still some little tweaks that I'm going to do. I'm going to recut these bridge slots a tiny bit. I'm going to do one more refret. I might get a new nut with slightly different spacing. This is the kind of stuff that, you know, it's not never ending because I can feel there is an end in sight. But already just sonically, I've been playing it for about a year and it's been fantastic. The one thing that really did take some adjusting for me was psychological. Visually, will you look at this thing? The multi-binding, the beautiful sunburst, the cream, the gold. Oh, the gold hardware, the twin pickups of different kinds. This is the kind of thing when you walk on stage with this guitar, it's like driving up to like the malt shop in the most tricked out Cadillac that you can imagine. And for me, a fellow who prefers to be slightly in the background generally, like when I'm on stage, it just made me feel so self-conscious and freaked out and like I was just, you know, like the cock of the walk. And I'll tell you, I now own it. I own the attitude. I am a different person now that I'm playing this guitar. If you're looking to stop being a wallflower, go get yourself a real flashy guitar and then develop the personality to live up to it. That's the story with this 1957 L-5CES, custom with these different pickups. The bracing on the inside shows that it was definitely made for a Charlie Christian pickup.